Hello, my name is darksideup, and this is Restless. This game was developed by Orino, and the synopsis reads: created in 3 weeks for the Spooktober 6th annual visual novel jam, estranged from your parents, you leave home in search of a new life. Things seem to be looking up when you find work at an old inn. As an employee, you're tasked with all sorts of work, maintaining the front desk, cleaning guest rooms, and tidying up the baths. After a coworker unexpectedly quits, your main job is now in the kitchen working close with the owner, Mr. Tukuri, whose famous soup is to die for. Yeah, this is expected to be 3K words, 3,000 words, about 15 minutes of playtime, and it has 3 unique endings determined by trust. Intriguing. All right, let's check this out. Hey you, what was your name again? Alright, darksideup. You're a minute late, and we're short-staffed. Miss Yameta quit this morning. Can you wipe the kitchen down and take care of the dishes from breakfast? Right away, sir. Despite being a week into the job, Mr. Tukuri still hasn't taken the time to remember my name. To be honest, I'm relieved. I take off my shoes and step into the hallway of the old inn. When I started here a week ago, Miss Yameta told me it had been in Mr. Tukuri's family for 250 years. Speaking of Miss Yameta, did Mr. Tukuri just say she quit? I had seen her at work only yesterday and was a little hurt she hadn't said goodbye. Maybe there was a family emergency or something. I run my knuckles along the plaster wall on the way to the kitchen, drawing blood. I imagine everyone who'd passed through over the last few centuries, one had done the same. I grab a cloth and spray bottle and wipe down the counters before heading to the sink. Before we continue that, don't you think you should wipe the walls? On the way there, something catches my eye. How long has that lock been there? I'm not usually a nosy person, but I suddenly feel a strong urge to approach the fridge. I have to know what's inside. As I stand there, a small voice in my head warns me that I should get back to work. Gripping the cloth in my hand, I wipe down the refrigerator. No! Hey, darksideup! I look up to see Mr. Tukuri, red as a cherry, waving his arms at me. Are you fucking stupid? What'd I tell you to do, huh? I just thought, you didn't think anything, you dumb piece of shit. I don't have time to listen to your excuses. I already told you, don't touch that refrigerator. I start to object, but my words catch in my throat like eels in a net. You know what? It's about that time. Can you just go make up the guest rooms? I'll take care of the kitchen. Yes, sir. I leave the kitchen and head up to the rickety old staircase. I've never been talked to that way in my life. Not even my father talked to me like that. Usually I reported to Miss Yameta during my shifts, so I hadn't interacted much with Mr. Tukuri up until today. If outbursts like that are common, I can see why she might have quit. By the time I finish cleaning up the guest rooms, it's time for lunch. Dreading the thought of bumping into Mrs. Tukuri, I head downstairs and back to the kitchen. Lunch is my favorite time of the day. Being as poor as I am, it helps that Mr. Tukuri offers all of his employees free lunch during their shifts. I prepare my tray and sit down at a little table in the corner of the kitchen. This past week, Miss Yameta and I both sat here eating and bonding, but now I'm all alone. People come from all over the country for the food. It's been featured in countless variety shows, and I'm lucky enough to eat it every day. Everything is good, but the soup is the best soup I've ever had in my entire life. As I sit lamenting the absence of Miss Yameta, my mouth full of soup, Mr. Tukuri walks over and lowers himself into her usual chair with a small huff. I'm sorry for yelling at you earlier, darksideup. With Miss Yameta quitting all of a sudden like that, the stress is getting to me today. He rests his elbows on the table and rubs his temples wearily. Maybe I'm not cut out to run this inn. empathy tugs at my heartstrings and I awkwardly try to reassure him. You're great, boss. Don't be so hard on yourself. Thank you. A moment of silence follows and I take another sip of soup. Do you know how long the inn has been in my family? Miss Yamete told me 250 years? Close, 251 years. I was never supposed to take it over. I had an older brother, but he died in a motorcycle accident. I was working for a big company in Germany at the time. Had to come home and help out my father. We never got along, and I wanted to be as far away from home as possible. But once I came back, well, everything was forgiven. Mr. Takuri stares off into the distance. I'm sorry. For what? About your brother. Oh, no, it's fine. It was a lifetime ago. How's the food? It's amazing. The soup is the best I've ever had in my life. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. It's a family recipe. Once we're finished with lunch, I collect our dishes and wash them. The rest of the day goes by uneventfully. I'm headed home now, Mr. Takuri. Have a good rest of the night. See you tomorrow. Thank you, darksideup. Be careful on the way home. I arrived back at my apartment, guided only by the occasional streetlight. Covered in sweat, I decided to take a bath. An ambulance. When I was young, I went to see the circus with my parents. I was so excited. The final act was shallow diving. The performer climbed a ladder, gave a bow, and aimed straight for the kiddie pool. The only problem was that she missed. She crunched into the floor like a broken accordion, and I never saw her move again. Everyone in the audience gasped, except for my dad. He just laughed. That's horrific. The memory, along with the cool autumn air blowing in from the window, make me shiver as I crawl into bed. I smack my alarm clock and roll over onto the floor. My stomach aches from hunger. I skipped dinner again last night. There was no way around it. I just don't have the money. I brush my teeth, get dressed, and run to the bus. The inn is about 40 minutes out from the city at the base of a mountain. Today, the bus is packed with tourists. Oh, the trees are so red and beautiful this time of year. A few months ago, Beautiful Japan posted a video about this area. She said the scenery is great, of course, but the soup at the Sansui Inn is to die for. You know, I love Beautiful Japan. We should have stayed at that inn. I tried making reservations, but it was booked until January. I press the button for my stop and pay my fare and step out into the fresh mountain air. After a short walk, the inn comes into view. I wish I could walk this road to work forever. Good morning, Mr. Takuri. Good morning, darksideup. I arrive as the guests are being served breakfast. I put on my apron and get to work. Partway through chopping a small mountain of vegetables, I notice a woman standing in the kitchen doorway, tapping her foot expectantly. I glance over at Mr. Takuri, but he is busy finishing up the last few meals. I put down my knife and make my way over to the guest. Yes, ma'am, how may I help you? There is a hair in my soup. Can you get the manager? Her voice is curt. I can feel the anger simmering underneath, ready to boil over. Yes, ma'am. So sorry for the trouble. I walk across the kitchen to Mr. Takuri. Excuse me, Mr. Takuri? One of the guests is saying there's a hair in her soup? Huh? He turns to me and I nod in the direction of the sour-faced woman. All right, I'll take care of this. Mrs. Takuri waddles away in a huff. After a brief exchange, he leads the customer into the hallway. A few moments later, however, Mrs. Takuri's voice shakes the old inn. You probably put the hair in there yourself! How dare you! I run out of the kitchen in an attempt to defuse the situation. So would Mr. Takuri. Ma'am, please go back to your room. He's right. He's in charge of the cooking and he barely has any hair. Well, I never! You can be sure you're getting a bad review. Okay, ma'am. We work through the rest of the day in silence. Mr. Takuri mopes at the far end of the kitchen, merely nodding and grunting when necessary. We say nothing as we eat our lunch. After the guests finish dinner, I take my apron off and gather my things. I'm headed home, Mr. Takuri. Is there anything else you need before I go? After breakfast tomorrow, I have some errands to run. You can come in at 11. I need you to cover check-ins in the afternoon, but most importantly, I need you to clean the baths. Scrub them real good, would you? Yes, sir. Well then, have a good night. See you tomorrow. You too, sir. What a terrible day. Slipping into the tub, I think about how the only time I've ever felt true privacy was during bath time. I didn't have a bedroom of my own growing up, living with my parents in a one-room apartment. Oof. We were as poor as dirt. My dad couldn't work, so we both relied on my mom. Feels like a long time ago now. Close my eyes for a second. I feel a tug at my leg. I jump. Looking down, I see... Ah! The water disappears, replaced by dark, wriggling tendrils. Hair? It envelops me and holds me there in the water. I shiver in fear. I expect it to drag me under, but it cradles me gently back and forth like a mother with her baby. I must have fallen asleep in the bath. I look around and there's no hair anywhere, except for on my head anyway. That's enough of that for tonight. I pull the plug out at the bottom of the tub. The water funnels down the drain. I leave the bath and head back to my bedroom. I stare out of the window at the street below. The street is quiet, with only the occasional car passing by. My stomach rumbles so loudly I jolt awake. 10:15. I missed my alarm! In a panic, I get dressed and run to the bus. I don't even have time to brush my teeth. Not wanting to cover the seat in my sweat, I opt to stand for the ride. I step off the bus and run down the mountain road towards the inn. The autumn mountain air stings my nostrils. As the inn comes into view, I check my watch. 11. Right on time. I take my shoes off and step into the hallway of the old inn. I make it to the kitchen but immediately freeze in a doorway. The lock is gone. I'm gonna clean the baths. I'm gonna open the refrigerator. I reach out to the refrigerator, but at the last second, I can't bring myself to open it. No, Mr. Takuri trusts me, and I can't break that trust, I tell myself. But I just have to know. I close my eyes and count to 3. 1, 2. On 3, I open the refrigerator door, but Mr. Takuri storms in behind me. What the fuck are you doing? He slams the door shut and shoves me to the ground. How many times do I have to tell you, huh? I ought to crush you like that cockroach you are. I won't take Mr. Takuri's abuse anymore. Fuck you! I run out of the inn and down the winding mountain road. I didn't go back to the Sensui Inn the next day, nor the day after that. I moved from job to job in the city, quitting as soon as the stress got to be too much. As much as I tried to erase all memory of that place, there was one thing that I returned to over and over again. For all my travels, I never once found a soup as delicious as Mr. Takuri's. I didn't want to admit it, but it was part of the reason I eventually went to school and became a chef. I studied hard. I read hundreds of books. I tried thousands of recipes, but to no avail. I was left with no other choice. I had to go back to the Sensui Inn and learn Mr. Takuri's secret. It's been 15 years. Surely he's forgotten everything, I tell myself. I plan a day trip as I live about 3 hours away. At noon, I finally make my way along the familiar winding mountain road, feeling as if no time had passed at all. I pass each familiar landmark, brimming with anticipation. It's up ahead, just around this bend. I peer into the thick shadow of the forest as I slowly drive up the winding road, searching for the gap in the trees where the entrance should be. But I never find the Sensui Inn. I drive up and down the mountain until dusk before finally giving up. The thought eats away at me throughout the long drive home. If only I could have learned that recipe. Ending 2. Interesting. All right. Gripping the cloth in my hand, I wash the dishes. I go over to the sink and begin washing the mountain of breakfast dishes. By the time I'm done, it's time for lunch. A few moments later, however, Mrs. Corey's voice shakes the old inn. You probably put the hair in there yourself! How dare you! I run out of the kitchen and in an attempt to defuse the situation, I side with the customer. Excuse me, ma'am. May I borrow Mr. Takori for a second? I lead Mr. Takori back into the kitchen and whisper to him. Look, Mr. Takori, I know she's wrong, but you can't talk to people like that. Just refund her breakfast and go on with your day. Mr. Takori glares at me before heading out into the hallway again. I'm sorry about that, ma'am. You're right. I'll refund the breakfast and prepare another meal for you. Please wait in your room. That wasn't so hard, was it? Thank you. The guest heads back upstairs. Mr. Takori comes back into the kitchen. Take my shoes off and step into the hallway of the old inn. I make it to the kitchen but immediately freeze in the doorway. The lock is gone. Clean the baths. I decide to do as I was told and clean the baths. I head into the men's bath first, and armed with my trusty sponge and bottle of cleaner, I get to work. Once I feel satisfied with my work, I move on to the women's bath. Although Mr. Takori was supposed to have emptied the tub last night, water sits stagnant at the bottom. I reach in and grab a fistful of hair from out of the drain. The water goes down with a slurp. After disposing of the hair, I get back to the task at hand. I scrub and scrub until the bath is so clean you could eat off of it. I'm back. Welcome back, Mr. Takori. Did anything happen while I was gone? No, sir. I cleaned the baths, like you asked me to. Mr. Takori stops in the doorway leading to the kitchen. What did you do with the lock? What lock, sir? Don't play dumb with me. The lock on the refrigerator. It's been like that since I got here, sir. Do you think I'm fucking stupid? Mr. Takori gets so close to my face I can count the cavities. He shoves his sausage-like fingers in my chest. I asked you one question. I asked you a question. Do you think I'm fucking stupid? I won't take Mr. Takori's abuse anymore. Fuck you! I ran out of the inn and down the winding mountain road. I didn't go back to the Sensui Inn the next day, nor the day after that. I moved from job to job in the city, quitting as soon as the stress got to be too much. As much as I tried to erase all memory of that place, there was one thing that I turned to over and over again. For all my travels, I never once found a soup as delicious as Mr. Takori's. I didn't want to admit it, but it was part of the reason I eventually went to school and became a chef. I studied hard, and I read hundreds of books and tried thousands of recipes, but to no avail. I was left with no other choice. I had to go back to the Sensui Inn and learn Mr. Takori's secret. It's been 15 years. Surely he's forgotten everything, I tell myself. I plan a day trip, as I live about 3 hours away now. At noon, I finally make my way along the familiar winding mountain road, feeling as if no time had passed at all. I pass each familiar landmark, brimming with anticipation. It's up ahead, just around this bend. I peer into the thick shadow of the forest as I slowly drive up the winding road, searching for the gap in the trees where the entrance should be. But I never find the Sensui Inn. I drive up and down the mountain until dusk before finally giving up. The thought eats away at me throughout the long drive home. If only I could have learned that recipe. This is still ending 2? What the hell? Alright, hang on. Let me think. There are 3 options. Fridge or dishes, Mr. T or guest, fridge or baths. Alright, so we tried for ending 2, fridge, Mr. T, and fridge. We also tried dishes, the complete opposite, guest, and baths. Both gave us ending 2. So we need to try. Let's try fridge, guest, fridge. Alright, so the first one we're gonna do is fridge. Alright, now we're gonna pick the guest. Now we're gonna pick the fridge. As I reach out to the refrigerator, a scorching heat radiates from my tailbone to my skull. I turn around to see Mr. Takuri holding a bloody knife! I fall into a heap on the ground. The heat has dissipated. My blood courses sharp through my veins as like icicles. I look up at my boss. His eye is twitching and he's breathing heavily. I can't have you finding out my secret. It ruined my life. I'll be fine. No one cares about you. Just close your eyes. No one will miss you. I promise. Ending 1. Alright, we got it. Alright, let's try for ending 3. Another option is dish, Mr. T, bath. So this was gonna be dish. Side with Mr. Takuri. Clean the baths. I'm back. Welcome back. Did anything happen? No, sir. I cleaned the baths this morning. Excellent work. Thank you, sir. Have a good rest of your night. See you tomorrow. Hey, do you have a second? Mr. Takuri pauses and thinks while I gather my things. I think you might be the best employee I've ever had. I flinch. No one's ever said anything so nice to me before. I shake my head violently and wave my hands. No, I mean it. I think it's time to let you in on a little secret. Secret? What kind of secret? The secret of the soup, of course. I'll show you. Wait here. Mr. Takuri goes to a cabinet and takes out a jar. He heads down the hallway to the woman's bath and walks right in. After a short time, he returns, grinning from ear to ear. Wet jar in one hand, guest book in the other. What is that? He doesn't answer me. He flips open the guest book to today's date. He grabs a marker and labels the jar. He goes to the refrigerator and opens it. It's filled with jars, all of them labeled. He places the new jar among the others. Say hello to your new friend, ladies. So, Mr. Takuri turns and grabs me by the shoulder. How would you like to keep working for me? Ending 3. The fuck just happened? Well, we got it all. Alright, final thoughts. Baths by Orino is a short yet impactful visual novel crafted impressively within just 3 weeks for the Spooktober visual novel jam. Its Japanese pixel art style and simple, smooth controls create a calm atmosphere only for the psychological horror to sneak up on you through its multiple endings. The game's tension builds quietly, culminating in a mystery that unfolds at just the right pace. If you enjoy psychological horror that's hidden beneath a seemingly mundane setting, I highly recommend giving Baths a try. Congrats to the devs for delivering a thrilling experience. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. And if you like this video, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye!